All right, this is my attempt to make my in-person small group studio experience accessible to a wider audience on YouTube. So if you're watching this, you probably know me. And so I'm just going to try to do this experience as if you were here, okay? So outside of my studio, I had people gather in small groups, about 10 people, and then I'd hand them this sheet. And I have a copy of it in the comments or somewhere in the link that you can print it out. And this is a way to focus on integrating what's coming up for you as you listen to my experience and my and view my art. So one thing I told everybody that came to my show is I invited them to release me from perfection. I invited them to relax into the slowness. This exhibit I did with no rehearsal script, and so you'll hear me fumbling for the words, and I did that intentionally to be as honest as possible, because that was important to me. So yeah, I don't move quickly through my explanations, and there's some pauses, and that might cause some impatience. I know I can have that sometimes, and so I just invite you to embrace it, and yeah, if you want. All right, it's gonna start. Hello, welcome to my show, When She Wakes. You're walking into the space with paintings on the walls 18 months ago and was touring this space to possibly rent it. It was just bare floors and the pink paint. I immediately noticed the light and the amount of windows, and I loved it. But I was hesitant to take on this space, even though I wanted it so much. I had just, woken up from a decade of parenting and of having little kids, and we weren't having any more, where I could ask myself what I wanted to do and what I wanted to pursue. And the answer was a space to create these paintings that had been percolating my mind, but hadn't had the space or time to invest in creating these. So take a few breaths in my space, because to me, this is sacred ground. And I just wanted to explain the title a little bit more. It definitely refers to waking up from a parenting slumber of birthing and nursing and overseeing the growth of small children to a point where, and now I'm in a different stage of parenthood. It also refers to waking up to my awareness of being an adult, of being a woman, of being a role model, and really claiming some adulthood ideas that I hadn't been able to claim before. For instance, realizing that no one was going to give me a space or claim my creative time, that I was going to have to say, this matters to me, and claim it for myself. I don't know why that had never occurred to me, but it was scary to say, yes, I'm going to take our family resources to rent this space. I'm going to claim 3 hours 3 times a week to be in this space. And furthermore, I'm going to create things that I don't think has any market value. I had in the past always tried to like justify my art and creative expression by monetizing it and selling it and making sure other people wanted to buy it. And that had really done damage over the years. And this time I really wanted to create the things that I felt prompted and inspired to create solely because I wanted to create them with no, plan or guarantee that anyone else would care or that it was sellable at all. That had been a barrier that I just wanted to take off the table. So it was a really big deal for me to awaken to realize no one is going to give me permission. I have to claim this for myself. The last way that I wanted to share about awakening is realizing that I wanted to tell a story and I had things to say, and that's why I was personally creating the art. And I also wanted a conversation. And so the way I formatted this show is specifically designed to meet those desires of mine, that you can hear my story and the background behind these paintings, and that you also have time to respond. And then at the end, we can experience the sharing together where things that I hadn't even thought of maybe have occurred to you or connections have been made, and that's a really beautiful celebratory part of an artistic process. So thank you for coming with me on this journey. I'm excited to chat with you at the end. We'll start with the Flow series, and this was done before I had this space. It was done on extra shelves that we had. But I wanted to capture the feeling of knowing what was next. And when you're in flow, whether physically or like mentally, it feels so good to move through something and just instinctively know. And it becomes like a dance or an art itself, just the way your body just knows what's next. So now's your time to record any thoughts or just move the pen around in response to flow. The Divine series is a series of 4 paintings of women doing normal modern things, and I use biblical stories to compare these acts to divinity. And there's a lot there for me, but it was a vision I had before I had this space, and these sketches were the reason that I said yes to this space. I really wanted to paint these women big and celebrate and draw this undeniable connection between the empowering stories of Jesus in the Bible and how I see it show up in women. Walking on Water is the first painting in this series, and this has the reference to when Jesus walks on water in the Bible, and this is the only painting where I don't use any of previous paintings' poses of Jesus. This is all just from what I remember of kind of the poses I was in when I was laboring in the hospital. The things that I did use to reference the comparison are the boats in the background with Jesus' disciples looking on, and the wallpaper in her hospital room that looks like ocean waves. So I saw this comparison as dead on because my experience with my water breaking, it's like the beginning of the miracle. It's this stepping out into the void and trusting that it will hold you. And so, you know, this was one of Jesus's first miracles as well, when he steps out on the water, and people have all sorts of reactions. But ultimately, he was kind of claiming his own divinity, honestly, and yeah, a woman's water breaking has culturally been maybe funny or a little mini drama or even embarrassing, like, oh no, what if my water breaks in public? But I wanted to celebrate it as the divine thing that it is, the precursor to a really incredible human experience of bringing a life into the world. And you know, when your water breaks, you walk on water, and yeah, it's kind of a holy thing. Time for you. Cleansing the temple is a pretty emotional piece for me. This is a family history piece. The reference is when Christ uses a whip to throw the money changers out of the temple grounds, kind of reclaiming the space as holy. And yeah, so I painted this to an ode to what I wish could have been with my grandmother. She didn't have the support. It wasn't done for women to tell their partners to leave when there's been domestic violence. And so when I painted this strong woman in this pose of Jesus, when he's just pointing and they leave, you know, in the Bible story, he throws the whip around and he points definitively and they leave. And painting a woman that kind of resembles my grandma doing the same thing was so emotional for me. And when my dad came to see that piece, I think he knew. I said it was related, and he sat there and he didn't say anything because we still don't really talk about it enough. When I showed this piece in a walkthrough event, this man came up to me and said, "Hey, can we talk about this piece?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm that little boy," and sadly, domestic violence is somewhere a part of, I think, almost everybody's story. And so I wanted to paint this hopeful piece, empowering piece, that we can get to a place where women feel supported and empowered enough to say no and reclaim their holy spaces and create places of safety for them and their family. Your turn. And in Agony She Wept is a painting that references the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus went to suffer for the pains and afflictions of all humanity. And in this painting, you'll notice that she's menstruating. And as I was learning more about what it means to be female, menstruation is a huge part of that difference, that we experience this time of going under and sensitivity, and that it is actually a beautiful part of the female experience. And of course, there's not a lot of openness around bleeding in our society, and I had never seen a painting where someone was bleeding. And I wanted to change that as well. I wanted to first stop making it such a taboo thing, and also honor it for the way that it brings women to a place of of depth and softness, and very similar to what I imagine the story of Jesus is getting at, descending below all things, and really feeling the depth of the earth's pain. And you'll also notice that the destruction going on around, maybe a reason for her being in this pose of agony, that she's feeling the hurt of the earth as it's being cut down and destroyed. Processing, and in agony she wept. The last one in the series, This Is My Body, Take, Eat. It's a woman breastfeeding on her bed, and the overlay of a suggested cross from the windows and the wrapping around her. It's similar to the wrapping that is portrayed in the crucifixion of Jesus. And I experienced this. I think I breastfed for about 8 years in all, and there really isn't a better way for me to describe those exhausting body and soul moments of early morning breastfeeding, when you haven't slept and your body has taken such a beating, and you just you're hanging your head, and you're really not even present anymore, and you're just giving. There's this giving, amount of giving at that point to the life is draining, the energy is draining out of you, and you are giving it to another so that they can live. And I just, that we do that as a people, that I guess mammals and humans, we give of our bodies to sustain our loved ones, and I thought it was beautiful, and so made this comparison. Your time. The Connected series was a very intentional shift into nature, the reprieve after the Divine series. I was kind of worn out thinking about social structure and people, and just wanted to escape into nature. So I used these two paintings to delve into two different types of connectedness that I've found in the natural world. The painting Attuned, where the figure is lying on her back on a fallen over log, is attempting to kind of ask the question of, how does the forest absorb or attune to us? I have noticed this interesting feeling in nature where not only am I connecting to the natural landscape around me and enjoying the trees, hearing the birds, but I also at the same time feel attuned to, as in the natural world around me is aware or kind of absorbing my presence. And so this figure here is actually painted from the perspective of trees. That might sound a little crazy, but I was trying to envision how the trees might sense our presence, or how they might, how humans might feel to the natural world from their perspective. And I realized that hair is technically dead, and nails are dead, so maybe we would feel or look more just like the living parts of us. And so when I got to the point where I was trying to put hair on her, I just couldn't. And I couldn't really define her nails either. But what did feel right instinctively was these colors that were showing up on the bark of the trees, also moving into her body as well. And in a way, it was representing this movement and this attunement that we do have in nature because we are part of nature. What's this painting bringing up for you? Your turn. The painting Living in the Connected series is a different aspect of being connected. I had taken this photo after spending time in the Pacific Northwest with my aunt, and I kept on reviewing the photo after I came back last year, and there was this like uncomfortableness, even though I love that place where I took the photo, as I was just trying to figure out why I both wanted to paint this so much, but it was bringing up all these feelings and emotions for me. I finally named that it was because I knew something was lurking, that everything connected to my aunt had become also something that I was trying to ignore, because she had been diagnosed stage 4 breast cancer, and that it was coloring even my physical experiences in nature. Like that place was now had like a heaviness to it. And so I painted this painting of trying to really capture how the darkness felt in the forest, looking out into a bright day. And also I painted on the nearest tree what mammograms look like with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And so there's just small little veins of the white normal tissue and then a few nodules. And even though it was quite painful to place the other thing, like the lurking dark thing, on the canvas, it was also, it felt like the whole picture, and it felt like the truth about living. And it was very therapeutic for me to paint such a beautiful place, a place that I love so much, and also paint the truth that there was this thing, and kind of face it a little bit. And it reminded me that living is all the truth, that to accept the lightness and the beauty of living, you also hold place for the scary things and the dark things and the unknown. Response for living. The triplet series accommodations is the final piece that I completed just a few weeks ago. And it references the Japanese proverb, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. It's usually portrayed with three monkeys covering their eyes and ears and then mouth. And that image has always like resonated with me, but not the way it's supposed to. It's supposed to say, you can't just pretend you don't see and hear, and you can't just not say something, kind of like covering up, or like hiding, right? When, something's wrong. But to me, I just always felt like, oh, I get you. Yeah, it's just too much. And at the same time, these past 18 months, I've awakened to this realization that I have spent a lot of my life not understanding that, or not wanting to see that I have some sensitivities, probably ADHD, and probably not neurotypical, and that I get extremely overstimulated and overwhelmed when I see too much, when I hear too much, and with sensory things like being really cold. And I have always felt uncomfortable with anything that would accommodate or admit that like I wasn't comfortable. I don't know where that came from, but I kind of took pride in the idea that like, I don't need anything, I'm good. That felt like strength to me, but what I have come to realize is that pretending like I'm not affected by something or trying to pretend is not strong. That real courage has been that I have claimed that I need accommodations and that I want them, and that this helps me experience life in a calm, good way. My last experience with this piece was a surprise. Me and my daughter, Brighton, who's 10, were reading an art book, and we came up with the idea that she could embroider on these canvases right before the show. And until then, my art studio had been like mine. It was a stretch for me to have her take the paintings in her hands and then poke needles into it. And she did it like really like how a kid does things, like spontaneously and like no nerves, she was just all in and just going for it. And it was great for me to like release control and just I had to walk away definitely, but just practice this trust of letting someone else collaborate and letting the art not need to be so controlled. Time to process accommodations. For my floor-to-ceiling painting called Identity, I guess I should try to explain the goat and the sheep head. I've never painted an animal before. It has never appealed to me. But when I was wanting to paint this feeling I was having, I just really had to put a goat head on one side and a sheep head on the other. So this painting, if I had to sum it up, is through the parable of the sheep and the goats. It's a pretty well-known Christian parable where the sheep and the goats are mixed in, and then when Jesus comes, he's able to tell them apart. And historically, you want to be the sheep, right? Because the sheep follow God. They're like the good people, and they go on the right side, and the goats are on the left. I grew up with that concept of you definitely want to be identified as the sheep. Well, there came a point this last year where I just wasn't really feeling like a sheep. I didn't feel like I fit in anymore in a church pew and at church, and starting to feel like I was kind of trying to hide my goatness at church. And there's, I guess complex reasons for that, but and then out and free, like the form on the left, in the wheat field, in the sky with a tank top, starting to feel actually more spiritually connected. And this was a big, very kind of out of body shift for me, who had always felt very comfortable in a church setting, since infancy. And so I really did feel all the feelings of the goatness and the sheepness and the wearing different hats and feeling a strangeness with old identities. And then as I was painting, I was researching this parable more, and this beautiful alternate description came up. Someone else had really dug deep with this parable, and it turns out that this parable was written not to say necessarily that the sheep are the good guys and the goats are the bad guys, but that when farmers had goats and sheep, they had different nourishment needs, they had different habitat needs, they had different social habits. And so it was important to distinguish and separate them, to give them what they needed. But there was actually no, goats were actually better for some things, and sheep were better for others. And so there was no like good and bad. It was just different. And I really loved that. Time to process identity. The painting offering was trying to capture this moment I had with my 6-year-old daughter. We were at a park, and she pulled me over to show me this thing that she had made at the foot of this big tree. And she said, "Look, Mom, it's a house for squirrels, and it's also a present." And I was just like, wow, what an offering. What I wanted to capture is that there's this beauty to making an offering and kind of going out of your way to create something beautiful, and also the ephemeral nature of what we do as humans. Like this was gonna maybe sit at the base of the tree for, I don't know, a day or two, get like blown around or wrecked, but she had made it anyways, just because in the moment was bringing her joy, and she wanted to give something, create something. And so after I created this painting, I added the panels of fire, the flame on either side, because I even noticed, interestingly enough, that her creation or offering really was the perfect thing to set on fire. She created the rock rim and the flammable material on the inside, and I just thought about how offerings historically had been burned, and I liked the idea that the things that we give in this world, they get consumed. Reflection time for offering. Shifts series takes us right back to the beginning. It's the 3 paintings, the cairn stones, the feather, and the uprooted root ball. And these 3 were a different experience for me. They came with no pre-thought. I just had these canvases, and I had some burnout from these long projects, and I just started to paint backgrounds of colors, and then these images just came right to mind. Drew them really quick, painted them all together. It took 2 days, just a few hours each day to paint these 3, and there was kind of like this sense of kind of franticness or this intensity when I painted them, and I didn't understand at the time why I was painting these 3 images at all. They didn't seem to connect. It was just something very instinctive. And a few days after I painted them, I just put them up on the wall, and I realized, oh my goodness, this is what I was feeling. This large shift of perspective had happened in my life, and it had been so uprooting and so isolating, and so kind of this sensation of not being here, kind of being floating, that these 3 images were helping me explain my experience to myself. And so I named this shifts because I think these may be common sensations when people's worlds get turned upside down, and the way we're used to seeing things changes. And for me, this particular change happened so suddenly that I needed to express what that had created for me, this sense of being solo even when surrounded by people, and the sense of wasn't quite grounded anymore, and just kind of floating with the breeze, and definitely feeling the vulnerability of my roots just being yanked out and exposed. Last response for shifts.